I'm Michelle Bandler, and I have the iconic Dr. Ruth with me here today, who needs a little something out of her briefcase.
All right.
We'll just leave it at that.
Hold it 1 second. Whoever asks me a good question, you have to say, a friend of mine has a question. You don't have to say I. The good questions get a keychain, Sex for Dummies.
Yeah.
All right. Here is one for Derek. He doesn't have to ask me.
All right, so Dr. Ruth, you're no stranger to Google by now. You've been spotted on scooters. Has anybody here seen her on a scooter? Very nice, excellent.
I'll do it again.
Yeah, she's been on this very stage, and of course, if you haven't been there yet, make sure you visit Dr. Ruth on YouTube. She's got amazing, amazing videos on there. Some of our favorite celebrities being questioned by Dr. Ruth talking about sex. So we really want to talk about your new book, Sexually Speaking, What Every Woman Needs to Know About Sexual Health. But Dr. Ruth has a really fascinating story, and this is actually your 35th book to be published. So I know you write, you lecture, you work one-on-one, and of course you have a very long TV and radio legacy, which we all know about. So tell us really quickly, what do you love most about what you do?
Good question. First of all, I don't write because I'm not computer literate, but don't tell anybody. Now it's on Google, don't tell anybody. I talk. And since I talk pretty well, I have Pierre Lehu, whose name is on the book, for 30 years, the same Minister of Communications. I talk, he puts it on the computer. And for this particular book, which I'll say something else a little later, I did it with a gynecologist. Important for you women here and also for men, because that's a book about sexual health that I would not have done without an MD, without a medical doctor. We'll talk about that later. What do I like best? I tell you what I like best. I like the combination. I like that I taught now 6 years at Yale. I taught now 6 years at Princeton. Cross your fingers, all of you, say a prayer, because I'm right now talking to Columbia University Teachers College. I probably will get it to teach a course in the fall. You don't know that yet.
No, I'll make a little call. See what
All right. Teachers College about the family. So what I like is, that's why I call myself a psychosexual therapist and not just a sex therapist. I keep the psychology of relationships, of the psychology of psychological health, all involved in their talking about the things that we are going to talk about in terms of sex. So for me, to have a big toe, I'm 4'7", but a big toe of mine in the academic world, and being able to have somebody that I can talk, and we get one book after the other, I think that combination, and my private practice where I learn a great deal. I think for me the importance is really that combination. It's not research per se, but I do base what I'm talking about on scientifically validated data that all of you will hear about.
Yes, we love data here. So tell us a little bit about your story. Like I could tell your bio, but it's absolutely fascinating and I think really informs who you are as a person. Okay. So could you give everyone sort of a snapshot? I'm not sure everybody knows your whole history, like P.S. Dr. Ruth was a sniper.
I have to tell you, I have to tell you something. I'll talk about that very in a short kind of paragraph, but I have to tell you why I'm smiling. As I'm talking to you Google people here, I just got into my hot little hands a documentary done by the BBC, the British Broadcasting, and now I'm going to blush. That's why I wore a dress. I wore a blouse with a little red, so you won't see that I blush. But I have to tell you, the documentary is 12 extraordinary women, and I already watched it now 3 times, and the British did a fabulous job. They really did an essence, and they had footage in terms of World War II, I'll tell you something in a moment, that I have never seen. They have footage in there of Hitler that I've never seen, because the British went into World War II so much earlier than the Americans, so They have a lot of footage. They did a beautiful job. That one is going to be shown at a benefit for the Museum of Jewish Heritage, not far from here, on Battery Park, where I'm a trustee. So you will get invitations. And I can't show it on television yet, because they first have to see that they can sell it. You Google people know what that means. But I can show it for non-profit places. That's number one. So when I said to you before, what has happened to me is like most interesting, even to me, because as we speak, I'm now 83. As we speak, on June 30th, there is a theater play, and I just heard the first part of it until the intermission. Deborah Jo Rupp, all of you must know from the television program.
That 70s show.
That 70s show. I did not know
She
about
played
her.
the mom, right?
But don't tell her. Right now, I know how she plays and I know how she talks. And talking about my history, the funniest thing, so that will be a play called Dr. Ruth, semicolon, all the way. And first I said, hold it. You can't call it all the way. And then I said, I knew that you young people would laugh, so I said, it's okay. So that's happening this June. So now I'll tell you why I'm smiling. I was born in 1928 in Frankfurt, in Germany. I lived the first 10 and a half years with a wonderful family, parents. I was an only child. A grandmother, my father's mother, lived with us. She had nothing else to do but take care of me. And I went to a very good school and had a wonderful, wonderful, very early childhood. Then in 1939, as all of you know, at the start of World War II, I was chosen, and I will never know why, to be on a Kindertransport. That means on a group of children who were sent out of Nazi Germany, Jewish children, to safety. And I will never know how come I was on the list to Switzerland. My parents did not make it out, neither did my mother's parents, any other relatives. My grandmother who lived with us was already a widow. So I lived 6 years in a children's home that became an orphanage. From there, I went to then Palestine. I believe, and I still am an ardent Zionist, even so I live here, but I believe that every people in the world need a country of their own. And I go to Israel every single year. I do documentaries. I'll tell you about that in a moment. And I went to be on a kibbutz. A kibbutz is a collective farm and working the earth. I picked olives for 1 year. I thought that I need to learn something. By that time, I was 17 and a half. I wanted to study medicine, but I didn't have a high school diploma. I knew I had no money, no parents. So I said, okay, I'll be a kindergarten teacher. I'm short. I can sit on those little chairs. And I was a very good kindergarten teacher, director of a kindergarten. One more sentence. I married a fellow. I'm still good friends with him. He lives in Israel. We are not married, but he was studying medicine in Paris. That's how I got to Paris. I went to the Sorbonne. I studied psychology. He went back to Israel. I forgot to tell you about the sniper. That's what you want to hear. It wasn't an act of heroism, but all of us did belong to some group in 1947-48 when Israel became a country and when there was a war. For some strange reason, I became a sniper. If you look at your telephone over there, sir, and your thing, if anybody doesn't ask me a good question, I can still put 5 bullets in a red circle, and I knew how to throw hand grenades. I was fortunate. I never killed anybody. I was badly wounded in 1948 in June. On my 20th birthday, A cannonball exploded in the girls' residence where I lived. Some girls were killed, and I was badly wounded on both legs, but that's not why I'm short. I would have been short anyway. So I then was fortunate being in Paris, going to the Sorbonne, and on my way back to Israel in 1956, I said, I have to see the United States. I will never have money to get out of Israel to visit here. There was an uncle in San Francisco. I need to see if he's as short as me. And I came to the United States on a tourist visa. I then worked at the French embassy visa. I made $1 an hour, and look what happened. I got my master's here at the New School. I got a doctorate at Teachers College, Columbia, and look what happened. Okay.
Amazing. So I'm going to have to ask this because if I don't, I know somebody will. What is the number one question that you get on sexual health?
Okay, you see the interesting part, let me tell you what has changed, especially for you young people. There are some things that have changed. For example, there are less unintended pregnancies in this country these days because of people like me. I'm not the only one. I started to work for Planned Parenthood, New York City, doing research and became a director of research. I thought these people are crazy. I thought all they talk about is sex. They don't talk about literature. They don't talk about the weather. They don't talk about anything else but sex. 48 hours later, I decided that's a fabulous topic. So I tell you some of the things that have changed from those years. I did my doctoral dissertation on that research study at Planned Parenthood. So what has changed? Less unintended pregnancies, because we talk more about it. What has changed, particularly for you women here, there are less women in this great country of ours who haven't heard the message. I'm not the only one. Many others talk about it, but I talk about it all the time, who haven't heard the message that a woman has to take the responsibility for her sexual satisfaction. Even the best lover, even one trained by me, can't bring a woman to orgasm if she doesn't tell him what she needs. So there are across the country less women who haven't heard that message. There are still lots of issues, how to say it, how to say it tactfully so that he doesn't lose his erection during lovemaking. All of this we can teach. The question that I'm really asked most often is about boredom. So if I have one thing to say in terms of long-term relationships, I'm old-fashioned, I'm a square, I want people to have long-term relationships. And the question that I'm being asked most of the time is the question about how to make lovemaking and the bedroom less boring.
So how do you answer that?
So I tell you how I answer. First of all, everybody has to keep their worries outside the bedroom. They have to, even when the stock market goes down, very often men lose their erections. And I don't know about Google people, but I know about stock market people. So to make sure to put all of your worries in a package, leave it outside the bedroom door. And I promise you, nobody else will pick up your worries. Also, if people are stressed out, that's the new buzzword here, to make sure to take maybe a little break before lovemaking, sleep 20 minutes, or do something. I'll tell you.
Take a nap first?
Yes.
I thought you did that after.
Because that's what the French, but you have to get up again. You can't stay sleeping. So I learned that from the French. The French women do that. They take a little nap.
Really?
Yeah.
So
they're
not only are they all skinny, they also are fully powered up for sex all the time. French women.
So on a serious note, to make a priority of that sexual life, not to put it on a back burner, like next week or the week after or in 4 weeks, to use fantasies. There was a call not too long ago from Brazil. What's his name? No, it didn't come from Uruguay. It came from Brazil. And somebody said she has difficulty, a woman, she has difficulty concentrating. I said, keep your mouth shut. But in your fantasy, make believe that the entire Brazilian soccer people are in bed with you. But keep your mouth shut. So if I give one more good advice, use fantasies, but don't ever tell him, my last lover had a bigger penis, and don't ever tell her that you really like women with tremendous breasts, if she does not have that. But use fantasies, but keep your mouth shut. There are people who would like to hear each other's fantasies. I have no problem with that. If that couple knows that's what they really would like, use it. But very many people should use fantasies, keep their mouths shut, just get into the fantasies. And there are books, not written by me, there are other books, My Secret Garden, Nancy Friday, there are all kinds of books, Men in Love, that talk about bring fantasies to the reader.
Okay. So if you had to distill this into like one tip that we all walked out of here with to make our sex lives better, what would it be?
The first tip I would tell you people, bravo to you. Here you're taking your lunchtime and you are sitting here listening and learning about sex. Now I have to tell you something funny about tips. So here I'm doing this book, and I like that they can have it for $10. I like that very much. In the store it's 20. So I myself thought, oh, I can't okay that what Dr. Amos Grünebaum, good friend of mine, chief at the Cornell Medical Center, gynecologist, obstetrician, what he put on page 61. When I read that, because he did some of the stories from his office, I give the flavor of the sexuality education and all the things, but he gives some so on. On page 61, and even I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not going to talk to Google people about that, but I have to do it. There is something here that I thought I would never in my entire life put in a book of mine. And it says top 10 tips from Dr. Amos on shaving the pubic area. So when you say to me, what is new? In the Jewish tradition, it says a lesson taught with humor is a lesson retained. I could never tell you a joke, but I can hear questions about somebody on radio asking me, I did 10 years of the radio Sexually Speaking, somebody said his girlfriend likes to toss onion rings on his erect penis.
Oh my God.
I giggled. And I did exactly what you are doing, because a good sex therapist has to visualize what people do on their kitchen floor, living room, couch, bedroom. So I did not think that in 2012 I would plug a book. I'm even going on Howard Stern. I was just on the doctor's program. I flew to California, taped the doctor's program for Valentine's Day. I didn't think that I would have on page 61 10 tips of shaving. When I started in this area of sexual education, sex education, sexuality education, I don't think anybody talked about shaving down there. Now, here's 10 tips of it. So things are changing, and somebody who is in this area of sexuality education has to be aware of what the changes are and has to adapt to that.
What do you think we should all watch out for in the bedroom that might affect people's overall relationships? Like, are there any telltale things that happen in the bedroom that's like, you're headed for trouble?
No, I tell you what one has to be careful, which I told you already, is about boredom. It's about being too tired. You young people work very hard. You have to make time for lovemaking. There is just no other advice that I can give but to say you can't be too tired. You can be too tired on a Monday, but you can't be too tired the whole week. I could never sit here and tell you how often to engage in any sexual activity. Each person and each couple is different. What I can say is those people who don't have a partner right now, I don't want you, especially you here, Google people, I don't want you to just pick up somebody for tonight. I am old-fashioned and a square, and I'm repeating that. I believe in relationships. But I do believe that the time has come in 2012 that a woman can ask a man, would you like to go to a movie? But she can't fall to pieces if he says, no, I have to wash my hair tonight. Because that's what they heard all of the years. In the Victorian time, when a woman wanted a man to pay attention to her, she dropped a handkerchief. Sometimes the wrong man picked up the handkerchief. Sometimes, and that was very sad, the handkerchief remained on the floor. But at least she took the initiative and the courage to drop the handkerchief. I have a collection of turtles. Don't give me any more. I have a whole collection, not live turtles, little pin turtles, little toy turtles, because it gives a message. A turtle, if it stays in one place, it's very safe. Nothing can happen to that turtle. If that turtle wants to move, it has to stick its neck out. It has to take a risk. It could get hurt, but it does not move unless it sticks its neck out. That's a little bit what's happening in terms of relationships, in terms of finding partners, and in terms even of new positions. And my example with me is page 61 in the book.
So you have a doctorate in the interdisciplinary study of the family, and the documentaries that you've done are a lot around how families manage in different environments. So how do you think the current environment is affecting the way that we instill strong sexual values in our children, or lack thereof?
So first of all, from the little history that I told you, you know that I was an orphan at the age of 10 and a half. So for me, family is crucial, very important. I don't care if it's 2 men, 2 women. I don't care. I do care that it's not a commune. I'm not for Esalen or any of these, quote, free love. It doesn't work in the long run. It doesn't even work when somebody says, but my partner wants to introduce a 3rd person. I say, do it in your mind, because it never works, because there is then more attachment, then there is jealousy. It just doesn't, in our culture, it just doesn't work. So for me, family is very important, because I did not have that. I thought I was ugly and short, nobody would marry me. Thank God I was married 3 times. But the last one, the last marriage was really the real marriage, almost 40 years. My husband passed away a few years ago. But you see that the whole emphasis of why I believe that in our culture, most people do want to have a significant other, a sociological term, one person in their lives. Let me tell you something. I never permitted my late husband, Fred, to come to any of my talks, because he would sit back there when I'm now going to ask for questions, and you can say a friend of mine has a question. You don't have to say I. So Fred would raise his hand. I would have to recognize him. I couldn't just ignore him. He would tell all of you, don't listen to her, it's all talk. And I made one exception. Fred loved Diane Sawyer. One time, Diane Sawyer came with 60 Minutes to my apartment in Washington Heights, where I still live. The cameras are rolling. Fred and I didn't have a heart to say to Fred, you can't be home. He really liked Diane Sawyer. The cameras are rolling, and Diane Sawyer says, first question, Mr. Westheimer, how is your sex life? To which Fred said, and I have it on tape, the shoemaker's children don't have shoes. So you see why I... Now, in terms of sexuality education, that's what you asked me, I do believe in our culture, I'm not talking about other cultures, we'll do that another time. In our culture, first of all, I changed my mind. I used to say to parents, never to look into the diaries of their children. It's private. I changed my mind because young people, preteens, don't realize that what they put, important for you people, what they put on the air, they don't realize cannot be retrieved. If it's a picture of a naked friend or if it's some gossip, they think they could retrieve it. So I did change my mind. I wrote a book, Teachers College Press, about the dangers. Parents have to know what their children watch on the internet. I also believe that parents of preteens, not talking about little ones now, should not walk around naked at home, because the young boy can get an erection by seeing his mother naked. The girl can see, when she sees her father, the father can have an erection by seeing his growing youngster naked. And I say we have to watch out for that, because everybody is going to get scared. They're going to think that something is not normal. And I'm saying make sure you prevent that. But make sure that you are an askable parent, so that your children have to know that when they have a question, that it doesn't matter if it's the mother or the father, that they can ask you. Those children who don't ask the questions, and many don't, bring a book home, put it on the coffee table. Say, I want to be an askable parent if you have any questions. How babies are born. It's not difficult to teach how babies are born. There's a special place. The uterus, not to say stomach, because if a girl has a stomach ache, she thinks she's pregnant. In today's, but to say how a baby is born, then the question comes, how does it get in there? You have to take a deep breath, and you have to say, when a mother and a father love each other, and when they make love, there's a sperm that goes into the vagina, and you have to say, it feels good. Because some children hear moaning and groaning, and they think, they think the mother gets hurt. You have to say they love each other and they feel good. So the sexuality education has to start very young. When they're asked, you have to be an askable parent.
That's very helpful. Can you come to my house next week?
I saw her children. You still have time.
So I know that I want to open it up for questions. Yes. But before I do, I know that in your 83rd year, you are rewiring, not retiring. Tell everybody some of the really exciting and fun things that you're working on.
So Sherry Lansing, it's a term that I did not coin, but you have to give credit to people who coin terms. Sherry Lansing from Hollywood coined a term, not to retire, but to rewire. And I believe in that. And a rabbi friend of mine told it even to the Pope. So I don't know if he said that it came from a Jewish mouth. I don't know. So I'm very fortunate, because I do really believe. I believe when people are not gainfully employed, they should volunteer. I do believe that somebody like myself, if I can still go and give lectures, and if I can now go and do, which I did already once before, some commercials, and the newest thing I told you about the play, which hopefully after Great Barrington, the subscriptions were sold out already. That's amazing. And if it's successful, it'll come to off-Broadway. It's not a Broadway. But it's really a little bit about the story of my life, and it's exciting. The other thing, brand new. Pierre, with whom I've worked for 30 years, came up with the idea. First I said no. Very often I say no first. Then I think about it a little bit and I said, oh, maybe. So Pierre came up with the idea. I usually say that a couple should drink some wine, not too much. Because if they drink too much in the evening, she falls asleep and he's not going to have an erection. So I say, drink a little. I say usually that less is more in terms of lovemaking. So here, end of April, we are going to have a wine called Vin d'Amour, a wine of love, and it has less alcohol. I don't know if it's good or not. You will have to judge it. I'm not an expert, but it will have less alcohol content. So it will give the idea of having a glass of wine, relaxing. Hopefully, it will bring about a good sexual encounter because it has less alcohol, and it'll have my face on it, and
Guaranteed.
and a glass, half a glass, and then it will say less is more. So I hope that it kind of gives people a message: go and have sex.
Thank you. So we have some mics there and there. So this would be a great time to ask some questions. And I know that you're going to give people, good sex for the rest of their life if they ask good questions.
Yes, and say somebody at Google, or say somebody else, or say a friend of mine. You don't have to say I. Who is the most courageous gets a keychain. The most courageous person who has a question. Yeah. Bravo, you get a keychain.
All right. Even if
Everybody applaud her for being...
Well, I figure I work in HR, so if I ask the first question, everyone should feel comfortable, right? I have a 2.5-year-old at home, and I have another one on the way, and I told a friend of mine who has a child the same age, and she looked at me in all honesty, and she didn't say, congratulations, or that's wonderful. She said, you had sex? That was the first thing out of her mouth. And I said to her that we have always been really comfortable in our house with closing the door and having mom and dad time. And my 2.5-year-old seems to understand that. And we haven't really told him that we're having sex or anything, but that's our time. And eventually we figure we'll tell him about that. But I'm wondering if you think that 2.5 is too young.
No, I think bravo. I think to give that message, you have your time with your truck, with your toys, with your dolls, whatever, the 2.5 years, and mommy and daddy have some time for themselves. Not only that, I do suggest for parents of young children to have, not to lock the door, because mothers particularly are worried then the door will not open, but to have a hook, because everybody can open that hook, so that when they do have sex, that they don't have to worry. This is particularly important for women, because if a woman listens with one ear, if her child is okay, she cannot concentrate. And then very often what happens to women, I know that in my private practice when people tell me their problems, women very often sabotage their the orgasm, because they say to themselves, it's not going to happen. Never mind, it's not going to happen. If she says to herself, it's not going to happen, she can be sure that it won't happen. So it's particularly important when there are small kids. We have less premature ejaculation these days because people have, I did a book, Sex for Dummies, and people have learned from other people that premature ejaculation, they used to think, is that a man doesn't really like to engage in sex, that he doesn't like women, that he doesn't want to give her the pleasure of his company. Not so. It's a learning difficulty, easily remedied. So on the one hand, the importance is to say, that's mommy and daddy time. And for the woman to say, I will have an orgasm, even if she once in a while doesn't have one. I want to say one more thing about women. Women who have difficulties having orgasm, I say use a vibrator. I did endorse one only because the guy who came up with that aerosolator is a scientist from Switzerland who came up with the first one with an electric toothbrush. That made me laugh. I said, okay, I can. So women should use it, but here's a danger, not to get hooked on a vibrator, because no penis can duplicate the vibrations of a vibrator. So to use it to get aroused, to get up on that curve of sexual arousal, then to put it aside and let him or herself bring her to orgasm. But what you are doing with the child is perfect. Once he will ask he will not only ask how did that baby get in, how is it being born, that's easy. A special place, and that's how you were born, but he will ask you, how did it get in? And then it's important to say, when a mommy and a daddy love each other, he places his penis inside the vagina, it feels good, and then don't talk about cesarean sections, but talk about it feels good, and then there is another baby.
Thank you.
Very good. You get a keychain later. Can I get another question?
Have we heard any of these words in Tech Talk
Yeah.
before? We're breaking down some walls.
Another keychain.
They really should turn the spotlights on.
The what? I didn't hear. Michelle.
Oh, Kara, too. I was going to use the
should turn the
kids, too,
spotlight
but
Yeah.
I really want a keychain. No.
Yeah.
Quick question. As Googlers, a lot of us do a lot of traveling. So
Yes.
any advice for absence makes the heart grow
Yes.
fonder, or ways to keep things
Fabulous
spicy while
question.
you're long distance?
Fabulous question, not just for young professionals, but also for people who go to different schools, or people who go to different graduate schools. You people are very fortunate because of all of your iPhones and because of the computers. And to use it, to keep that messages going is very important. And long-distance relationships can survive. But you both have to put some effort in it. You have to take some time out to be able to communicate. If there is no iPhone or something like this, to get on the phone. And to make a plan. To talk a little bit about sex, to make a plan. By saying, I'm coming home Wednesday, I will not be too tired, I'll sleep on the plane, we are going to have great sex. And I will tell guys, women like flowers, so if she is traveling, get her some flowers home. So when she comes home, not just for Valentine's Day, not just for birthday, for no reason whatsoever, just to say, I'm so glad I have you. I'm so glad we are in this relationship. But you do have to work on it. And this is true for people who travel, but it's also true for any of you professionals who work very many hours. You just have to, I say that to people who are attorneys, to medical students, you just have to make sure that you put the emphasis and that will. It doesn't always have to be intercourse. It can be just caressing. Let me tell you one more thing. Let's suppose that he wants to have more sex than you. Let's suppose you come back from the trip and you're really not in the mood. I'll tell you a secret. Give him an ejaculation. It takes 2 minutes. 2 minutes. You don't have to have a sexual arousal. You don't have to have an orgasm. You don't have to have intercourse. And you men, if she wants to have more sex than you do, then I tell you, it doesn't have to have an erect penis. You can go down on her. Young people do that more than the older generation, perform cunnilingus. You can satisfy her with your hand. You can satisfy her with a vibrator, or you can satisfy her with your big toe. But make sure that your toe is clean. So people are not Siamese twins. If he or she is not in the mood, they don't have to make a big catastrophe out of it. Why are you not in the mood? Don't you love me anymore? Do you have somebody else? Did you have somebody else on your trip? So there has to be that trust that this couple is really together and to satisfy each other whenever he or she wants to have more sexual satisfaction than the other one. Can I have one more? I have another keychain. One more courageous. Bravo. I need one man to get up and ask a question.
Okay, so there's a whole bunch of us that I work with that are just out of relationships.
And you have what?
just out of relationships.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, why is it that breakup sex is always is there any, just amazing? Why is there?
Break-up sex?
Well, yeah, like you break up and then you have sex one more time. So
What's
You see, that's what happened with the 10 years on radio, and that's what happens here, that sometimes I know that whoever is asking me the question already knows what I would say. I would say if people break up on a very serious note, I would say psychologically speaking and emotionally speaking, then don't have sex that last time. I really don't believe in that. Because somebody is getting hurt. Somebody, even if both have, he ejaculates, up to the ceiling and she has an orgasm like never before, not a good idea. If two people have decided to move on, then they should stick to that and move on. I also don't believe in hooking up for one night. I'm worried about sexually transmitted diseases. We will get a rise in sexually transmitted diseases in New York because we have sex clubs springing up all over. And people think nothing is going to happen. AIDS, you can take a medication. And I'm worried about that because I don't want to see another curve up with gonorrhea and syphilis and AIDS. So I think that if people decide to break up, make sure you make appointments with your girlfriends, with anybody. Visit anybody, but have a plan of what to do in the evenings. Not to sit home and mourn if you decided that this is the end. Be a little bit sad, because that's human. But then go on from there. Be that turtle who takes a risk and goes on. Okay, I have one more question, then I'll sign books. Okay, he gets a keychain. Oh, yeah, I have one guy there and one guy. I have two more questions. Yes, three.
Hi. I'm trying to reconcile in my mind what you said about keeping fantasies to yourself.
To what?
To yourself?
Yes.
A lot of fantasies kind of might need cooperation.
I tell you, that's a very important question. Some people like to hear about fantasies, and they should use it because it relaxes them. They don't think about a boss. They don't think about the next day work. They don't think about the pressures that all of us are under. They should use it. I'm saying if the fantasy is something that the other person doesn't want to hear, then just to use it in your own head. But to use it, like I told the guy from Brazil and the girl, make believe that the whole soccer team is in bed with you. So some people will like it and some will not. That's why I said some of the books, like Men in Love, are fantasies collected, or Playboy Reader, are fantasies collected. I don't even know if they make it up or not. But they're fantasies collected. Use them.
But there's a tension there if you're not sharing it.
Doesn't matter. The not sharing, I do not believe that everything has to be shared. I also don't believe that everybody should tell their new partner about the fantastic sex that they had with the last lover. I don't believe that people should share everything. I believe that there are certain things that should be in your heart and in your head, don't have to be shared.
Okay.
One more. You come later, you get Keisha.
So a friend of mine was wondering,
Yes.
if your partner is really stressed out about work, what can you do to help her out with that, to just relax?
Say that again.
If your partner is really stressed out by something like, say, work, for example,
Yes.
what can you do to help her relax?
Right. So one of the things to do is to not right away go into sex, but watch a sexually explicit movie. I'm all for something. If you can watch a sexually explicit movie together, you don't even have to watch the whole movie. Just watch the sex part. And for adults, I'm not talking about children. I'm talking about for adults. And it will get you in the mood. What it will help is to put the pressure that all of us have of work, of anything that's around, it kind of reduces it. Okay, can I get one more? I will.
I think we're out of time. Oh, one more. Okay.
One more.
Just if someone has chosen to be celibate, maybe not at the beginning of the relationship, but in preparation for marriage, which is probably the dirtiest word everyone here hears about. In marriage, when, let's say, arousal via pornography is not an option, and when you're still trying to maintain the intimacy of the relationship, and in preparation for marriage, for long term, how does a man prepare himself for that psychologically without necessarily having to be hooked on pornography and masturbation?
Very, very important. For Catholic people, I did 2 years of helping pre-Cana counseling. That's the counseling before the wedding with an economist, a priest, and I talked about sex. For Orthodox Jews who have decided not to be sexually active before because it doesn't fit into their framework, into their values, don't do it. And how to prepare for that, for example, in the Jewish tradition, and I think that can hold true for everything. There is a prayer that the Orthodox Jewish man tells his wife every Friday night. It says, there are many wonderful women out there, but you, he says to his wife, you are the very best. So that's the best sentence in terms of sexual arousal that a wife can hear. Whoever decides not to be sexually active and not to look at pornography, it does not matter. They can still read some manual of sexual activity without it interfering with their values and their beliefs. Very good question. So I'm going to go up there to give to sign books, and I'm giving you the keychains to give out to each one who asked the question.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for coming in. Thank you, Dr. Ruth.
Okay. Come over there.